Hey guys, Jay here, welcome to EonsOfBattle. 40k Codexes, love them or hate them, Games Workshop has been publishing them for close to 30 years. I own every single Necron Codex ever made, and I'm gonna read them and see if each one was a worthwhile investment. And stay tuned till the end to see what the EOB Complete community has been up to this week. So what are Codexes? Well, they're books published by Games Workshop, one for each playable race in 40k. In addition to being chock full of lore, they contain all the rules you need to play that faction in a game of Warhammer 40,000. My first experience with 40k Codexes was probably the best case scenario. In the middle of high school, I got my first book, Codex Necrons. I pored over this book, and even though my army was small, I could recite every special rule and piece of war gear from memory. I carry this book everywhere, and my copy is dog-eared and yellow from use. This book was an invaluable gateway into the world of 40k, and has made me a lifelong Necron fan. But that was a long time ago, and since then there have been a lot of codexes, and each one feels more and more like a tax to play the game. And it's making less and less sense to keep buying these things when I'm playing less 40k and more other games. I would love to look at every codex ever made so that I could give a full report. But there have been well over 100, and I don't have the time. But I do own every single Necron Codex ever made, so I will be rereading these to give myself a glimpse at how things have evolved over time. And for your viewing pleasure, I have shot the most dramatic and engaging piece of time-lapse footage ever captured. Please enjoy me reading all 5 Necron Codexes. I will be going over each one by one and looking to see if they are good looking books, how cool the lore is, and does it make me fall in love with the Necrons, and are the rules laid out clearly and efficiently. And some painting and modeling tips would be icing on the cake. Codex Necrons 2002. It's a bit before my 40k career began, but it is a fun retro book with some vintage cover art. It's short at only 64 pages, and in the early 2000s, somebody paid $20 for it. But it's a really fun addition to my collection, so let's take a look inside. They made use of every page they had, with barely any margins and no wasted space. It's a bit haphazard in layout, constantly switching up font type and font size to fill every single inch of usable space with lore. Another thing is that most of the book is lore, but not first person from the perspective of the Necrons, but is told through short stories of other races running into the Necrons. There is a tale of a Tex Priest engineer avoiding crashing his ship on a Necron tomb world he is unknowingly excavating, the story of an Eldar Farseer misidentifying a Necron planet as a potential home of the Codexes assassins, mankind's most potent anti-psycho weapon, and the story of not that Inquisitor Gregor exploring a seemingly abandoned halls of a Necron tomb, until the halls come to life and turn him to dust. The rules just pop up wherever in the book. When a Necron is mentioned that can be taken in the game, the stats are posted underneath. It's a little awkward and would probably lead to a lot of bookmarking key units like the Necron warriors and overlords. The book concludes with the now famous pretty picture section of the Codex, but here, it's not just photos, it has a point. It shows you examples of what to collect, a nice full color photo of each unit available to the Necrons, step-by-step building and pinning instructions, which are phenomenal. Suggestions on what to purchase next and what battlefield role each specific unit brings to the table, with a laughable tactics section that is just march everything forward. A page on painting finer details like glowing eyes or white armor sections, a page on adding decal transfers, and a full page spread on why the monolith is the best thing ever. These pages are worth their weight in gold and almost definitely make the idea of starting a Necron army less daunting by explaining neatly exactly what to do. There is even a section on making Necron-themed terrain. This book may be a little haphazard with the rules just thrown in everywhere, but it's got it where it counts. And the sections on painting and modeling are completely invaluable. They really make the book. It's only 60 pages, so just read it twice if you missed the rules for We'll Be Back the first time around. With all that said, I give this a score of an A-. Codex Necrons 2011 is an amazing book, and it's my baby. This book is far more polished than the 2002 version of the Codex, and the cover art is outstanding, giving you a good look at everything the Necrons have to offer. It is 96 pages, so it's still a pretty quick read, and smells good. Let's take a look inside. This book starts how I like it, with the badass beginning, a full page of exactly why the Necrons are the baddest boys in town. It then goes on to prove just how ancient the Necrons are with the title of their origin story, In the Beginning. In fact, the first third of this book is completely devoted to lore, going into great detail about the history of the Necrons, their tomb worlds, and their dynasties, and the ancient wars where they fought the gods and won. This book then smoothly transitions to the rules of each unit, and this is perfect as each unit gets a beautiful artistic illustration and a full-page spread of lore, which is awesome. Each unit in this book has a good chance of being someone's favorite, and it's good that each one is done justice. In terms of stories, there's far fewer than the 2002 Codex. There's a couple, but they're very sparse. What is cool is the inclusion of Necron quotes, here and there, that really put you in the mindset of an immortal metal being surveying his troops instead of a nerd reading a source book. If this book has a flaw, it's the lack of useful pretty pictures section. The photos sure are pretty, but they did away with any of the collecting or building. And you can forget about a terrain building guide. These 8 pages just show off the models, and they're painted at a level that looks amazing, but is so good that it might be off-putting to a beginner. And even a veteran would struggle to pull off some of these edge highlights. And in terms of this being a rulebook, all the rules are reprinted in the last 8 pages. So there's no rooting around for warriors on page 12 and spiders on page 40. Everything you need to know is printed neatly here in the last few pages. This book is clean. It's a great read cover to cover, and the consistent organization never leaves you confused. It was great in 2011, and it's great today. This book will make you an expert on all things Necron, and if it has any flaws, it's the absence of the really nice painting and modeling section that was in 2002. With all that said, I have to give my baby a B+. Codex Necrons 2015 is where things started to go off the rails. It is hardcover, which is nice, although I think you could pick these up in softcover, but they weren't as easy to find. It is 110 pages, which means that page count is steadily rising, and even though it is full color inside, which is nice, it has a weird patchwork layout that actually makes it a pretty confusing book to flip through. So let's crack it open and take a look. The problems arise on the very first page, with the entire origin story of the Necrons, which the last book spent 2 full pages on, is condensed into 4 paragraphs. And the confusion is not helped by a blurb about Imhotep the Stormlord thrown onto the next page, way before we know anything about him or the whole dynasty situation. One thing I can say is all the new art is glorious, and full color really makes it shine. I'm gonna talk about it here. There is a map, and it is dumb. All these books have maps and they're all terrible, but this book says millions of dormant tomb worlds. This map says there's 2. This is fiction. Make 1,000 little dots. Call them possible tomb worlds if you don't want to worry about possibly damaging the precious lore. There's some more things in this book that feel a bit lazy, like this chart looks like PowerPoints, and that's nothing compared to the new artwork. In the section of the book where it talks about some of the units you can take in a Necron army, they have high school quality Necrons. This book is really expensive and has tons of good art, and on every page that features these coloring book page Necrons, they're sitting right next to amazing art that makes them look even worse. Also, there are actual flubs all over these drawings. This Overlord staff, they forgot to send one copy-pasted blade back behind the staff so it looks awkward and flat. They did it right on the bottom, just not on the top. The Necron warrior's left hand is not on the Gauss rifle. The monolith's guns have been object select, copy paste, and then rotated 180 when they should have been reflected 180. They forgot to draw a pilot in the Doom Scythe. They remembered to draw a left hand on the Deathmark rifle, but because of the angle they drew it at, the left hand is twice as long as his right hand, and Necron warrior's legs are twice as long as their torsos. I don't want to be too salty, but this is just really, really bad. And Games Workshop seems to agree because this art has never been featured in any 40K publication ever again. So... And the problems don't stop there, unfortunately. The rules that were so succinctly stuffed into the last 8 pages of the previous codex have been expanded to 25 pages, with each unit getting its own page and photo, which is nice, but it's the same photo available on the web store, so... I remember playing this book back in 7th edition and constantly having to flip through to find spiders to remind myself how the Scarab Hive worked, and then having to flip to the appendix to see how the Fabricator Clause worked. The polish is gone. This book sucks. The layout is all over the place, the rules are spread out way too thin to the point where it is obnoxious to find them, and the handful of cool new paintings is not enough to save it. I give this book a D. Codex Necrons 2018, the cover looks pretty nice, but you might recognize it. They reused the cover from the 7th edition book. That is pretty garbage, but actually the book inside is not. It's basically a reprinting of the 5th edition book. It comes in at 120 pages, so she thick. And although it may be a little bit bloated, it's still a solid book. Let's take a look inside. This book does away with the collage style layout of the 7th edition book that was so hard to read, and instead prints everything in consistent white text on black background, which looks slick. The clip art Necrons have been replaced with proper artwork, and the classic illustrations have been brought back and colorized to make them shine. There is not that much to talk about here because it's basically word for word the 5th edition book, but it looks sweet and the art is outstanding. Even some 2002 art has snuck its way back into the book. The pretty pictures section is mostly devoid of useful information. Long gone are the days of showing you how to build models or paint, but there is a helpful section showing 2 beginner-friendly armies and suggesting what models to start with. Although the rules are still a bit bloated, they cover only the last 10 pages instead of the last 25, like Codex 2015. Although it does feel a bit weird to have bought the same book twice, at least it's not the 7th edition book. This codex is basically a collection of all of the best bits of art and lore from all the previous books, so I call it a win. Although, there is still no painting or modeling section, so I have to give this book a B+. Do you know the only thing better than a codex? Our Patreon. If you enjoy our videos, the best way to support us is becoming a member of our Patreon. Over there, you'll gain access to some behind the scenes, voting on what models I paint live here on YouTube, extra live streams every week, and more. With that out of the way, let's look at Codex Necrons 2020. Codex Necrons 2020. The 9th edition book comes hot on the heels of the 8th edition book, and it was pretty surprising. It's an interesting one. It redoes basically everything, it has some new stuff in it, but it's mostly just a restate of the lore that came before. So let's crack it open and take a look. The introduction is a bit fourth wall breaky, talking about the Necrons as an army in a war game, but it is nice to hear a description of what you should expect Necrons to play like. And once you flip that page, we're off to the grim dark territory with the real beginning, with a good old-fashioned badass blurb. Everything is a bit different, but it's actually a pretty good read. This book hits harder than the others about the Necrons' loss of humanity and the damage that 60 million years of sleep has done to their minds. This book drives home the fact that Necrons are metal zombies that worship death. And this book is chock full of fresh art that is a little darker and scarier. Some of the art feels straight up horror, and it's actually more new art than old art. The pretty picture section has been cut in half and just shows off a handful of color schemes and has some nice spreads on the newer Necron models. The art in this book is some of the best we've seen yet. Look at these dynasty pieces compared to the different color glyphs that we got in the past. I don't know if 9th edition is just more verbose with rules than previous editions, or maybe it's the 15 new units added to the ranks of the Necrons, but pages 49 through 120 are all rules. 71 pages of rules. It looks like 9th edition is giving us more to work with than ever before, with detachment abilities, dynastic codes, stratagems, and 5 pages devoted to crusade rules. This book is more than half rules, which at least makes it feel like a higher value. At least it's not just a copy-paste of books from earlier editions. Codex Necrons 2020 is actually pretty fresh. I was pleasantly surprised. The new artwork is very nice, they didn't just reuse the one they've been using, and it comes in at 120 pages, the same as the last book, but it uses them very differently. Still no painting and modeling section, but the fact that there is so many more rules in this book leads me to give it a B. So that was every Necron Codex, 5 books published over the course of almost 20 years. So what's the final verdict? It doesn't really matter, they're all the same thing. 20 years goes by and the lore didn't budge an inch. It's not like you need to keep buying these things to get the full story of the Necrons. The lore never changes. It's basically 5 books with the same information, just moved around a bit. Back in the days when 40k's popularity was a shadow of what it is now, it might have made sense to have codexes. It gave an air of exclusivity. This fine soft color book is a tome of forbidden knowledge. And while your friends are too busy playing sports and having lives, you hold in your hands the dark secrets of the deep lore of 40k. But now the lore is out there. If you want to read it, you can get the cheeky neckbeard take on 1D4chan, or if you want something a bit more bland, you could go with Warhammer Wiki or Lexicanum. And if you want something a bit more theatrical, you can have the lore told to you in vivid detail by one of the many excellent 40k lore tubers like Luton09 or Baldemort's Guide to 40k. The lore in Codex is important to me, but I'm a lore junkie. I reached out to the other half of EOB, Nick, who is a fellow 40k fan, to see if he had a different take on the Codexes.
What? Codexes? I don't know, they're dumb. Go make an app.
Well, you heard the man. Codexes are collections of lore and rules, but it doesn't add all that much to make the games of 40k more enjoyable. It's a fun read, once, but it's not cool models or paints and brushes. It's just a bit of expensive paper. So if you're not buying codexes for the lore anymore, what's left? Well, the current rules. I think I could probably handle codexes if it turns out 9th edition really is the last edition of 40k. At least the last edition for a long time. I was surprised by how good the 9th edition codex was, and I'm excited to play it in the game. But Games Workshop, let an edition breathe for a minute. 5 years minimum, and 2020 was a wash. The clock starts now. Does it make sense to hide the rules behind a $50 paywall? I play 4 armies: Necrons, Space Marines, Genestealer cults, and Orcs. That's $200 of codexes, and I would spend that in a second on models. But for codexes, that sucks, and I don't know if I can bring myself to do it. Maybe, instead of codexes acting like a single expensive subscription to the rules, Games Workshop can make a legitimate subscription service. And no, not their current app, which is $2.99 a month and you still have to buy a paper codex, and then punch in a code to unlock the digital codex on the app, which basically means you didn't need the app. I'm seeing a hilarious trend where people on Facebook are just posting the proof of purchase code online so that the first person to register it gets a free codex. 9th edition codexes are basically webkins. I could totally get behind a practical subscription service that held digital copies of all the core rules and army-specific rules. I think $5 a month would be fair and probably net Games Workshop more money in the long run than the codexes. No printing of physical books required. Maybe even subscription tiers where you get the core book and 1 or 2 codexes for $5, but there's an elite package that gives you the core book and all codexes for a few dollars more. Tournament players would eat that up. Then they could double their money by selling additional books of art and lore for weirdos like me. Maybe a beautiful hardcover book that holds all the lore ever written and every painting done for each faction. Maybe even some pertinent excerpts from some of the novels. Codexes are a weird holdover from the glory days of pen and paper wargaming. Although not dead yet, they do feel dated, and the days of physical paper codexes are probably just about through. So what do y'all guys think? Does Games Workshop need to axe the codexes soon, or do they just need to restructure? Let me know in the comments below, and now it's time for EOB Complete. We put out a challenge to our community to send us before and after photos of their recently finished models to be immortalized in our videos. If you want to join in the fun, you can submit a before and after photo of your painted mini to our Discord server, which you can find in the description below, or you can post it to Instagram with the hashtag EOBComplete. Without further ado, let's look at and get inspired by what the folks have finished this week. Ein and Ed from Cowboy Bebop by Scotch and Hobbies, a Shore Trooper by The Happy Heretic, a Redemptor Dreadnought by Clondra, a Primaris Stormspeeder by Yogpaz, a Robot by Gorefield, a pair of Castellan Robots by Boba Fett IG-88, a Black Coach by Lube, a Primaris Tech Marine by The Withered Moth, a Venari Aralan Warden and some Zangors by Dominatrix, a Necron Warrior by Jesus, a Wids Kids Wyvern by Orange, a Plague Marine by Prussian Blue, some Guardsmen by Just Make Stuff, some Cerberus Raiders by Megas, a Plague Terminator by Notorious Champ 30, some Wookiee Warriors from Legion by NJord42, a Primaris Incursor by Mike Hunt, a Tau Ethereal by It's Tabby Time, a Custom Weird Boy by Paolati, Rubute Gilliman by Guyman Hype, and a Primaris Apothecary by Huntron. Congratulations to everyone for a job well done. It's no small feat to get paint on minis, and you all should feel really proud. Nothing gets the hobby juices flowing like finishing a project, and we all thank you for sharing your work, motivating us and the hobby community to paint our plastic. Thanks for sharing.